Well, hi there, everybody. Happy Thursday. Happy first Thursday of the month of December 2022. Peter Greenberg here with our global travel update. You may remember last week I came to you from very far south, 66 degrees if you look at the map. We were coming to you from smack in the middle of the ice in Antarctica. Well, I've changed deserts. I've gone from the White Desert to another desert, and I'm coming to you today from the UNESCO World Heritage Site of AlUla in Saudi Arabia. An amazing place. You have to really see it and experience it. Keep in mind, this was a kingdom that was closed to the outside world for all intents and purposes, except if you were a religious pilgrim for more than 79 years. And now that it's suddenly opened over the last 3 years, archaeologists are having a field day, making unbelievable discoveries every single day. AlUla was known to the archaeology world, but not outside of AlUla, where I was earlier today in a place called Hemar, which I'm over here shooting for my PBS show, The Travel Detective. But more on that in the next couple of weeks. Most importantly, I hope you survive Thanksgiving. I'm not talking about travel. I just hope you survive Thanksgiving. But I hope you survive the Thanksgiving travel period as well. And it appears that most of you did. The airlines were actually flying 10% fewer flights than they did in 2019. People were a little smarter in staggering their departure dates and their return dates. And as a result, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving was not apocalyptic. The weather more or less cooperated. And so guess what? It was a relatively stress-free holiday weekend. Now, it wasn't stress-free if you were paying for your airfare. They're at, really high marks right now and continuing to soar, and they will do so through the end of this year. And that, of course, includes Christmas. Airfares over the Christmas holiday are about 37% above what they were 3 years ago. But at least in terms of operational reliability, the airlines did okay over the Thanksgiving Day weekend. So for that. Now, lots of other stuff to talk about. You may remember I talked about a couple of months ago. In fact, I showed you a picture of a parking lot in Turkey. Let's show that picture. That's me. And that's an all-day parking lot for 7 Turkish lira. That works out to 40 cents. Now, for those of you on the West Coast, should you want to park your car at LAX, check this out. 75 bucks a day. Yikes. I'm not, it's getting, and what's even crazier is, even if you don't want to valet it, the parking lots are so full because of the construction that it's almost impossible to find a place. So just keep that in mind. Okay, just wanted to show you those to give you a little comparison. But the point is, forgetting how expensive parking is at LAX, this is the year of the power of the US dollar against the euro, almost on a par, against the British pound, against the Turkish lira, which has been devalued about 5 times over the last 3 years, against the South African rand, and against the Argentinian peso. A true buyer's market and an opportunity to do all your Christmas shopping there. You'll make more money in terms of what you're able to spend and bring back. That's a fact. And it'll stay that way. It really represents on the dollar exchange about a 30% discount on basic goods and services that you'd be paying there. Now, hotel rates can be adjusted, airline fares can be adjusted, but a tube of toothpaste, a Big Mac, a cab ride, an expensive dinner, guess what? They can't be adjusted, and it is a buyer's market. So that's the first thing. Speaking of lines at airports, I got to go back to it. You've seen the pictures I've actually shown before about the lines to try to get into the Delta Sky Club at many different airports, whether it's LaGuardia or Atlanta or LA. I mean, you name it, it's become ridiculous. And so Delta Airlines this week sent a letter to their best passengers that basically said, we appreciate your service, but here are the new rules. Here are all the ways you can no longer get into the club. Or if you are going to the club, here's how long we're going to allow you to stay. I mean, it gets crazier and crazier and crazier. And the problem is, it defeats the entire purpose of a club in the first place if you have to stand in line for an hour when you only wanted to be in there 40 minutes to begin with between flights or before a flight. So, it makes you reevaluate why you're spending upwards of $1,400 a year to be a member when you can't even get in. I remember the Groucho Marx line, right? I would never join a club that would have me as a member. Well, why would you join a club as a member that won't let you in? Same deal. So we will follow that story as well. Now, having said that the US dollar is almost on a par with the euro, there is some good news for folks who want to fly to Europe. It is now more expensive to fly in America than it is to go to Europe in many cases. There's an airline called French Bee that flies to Newark, and between Newark and Orly in France, they're selling round trip tickets for $370 between New York and Paris. But guess what? JetBlue just announced they're starting to fly to Paris next year. And a new airline, North Atlantic, which is already flying, is also going to be flying to Paris. And their rates, one way, $226. That's not a bad deal. And that, if you book it now, it'll probably be good through about May 15th. So plan accordingly. That's that one. In the US, you're going to see continuing discounting on some of the startup airlines like Breeze and Avelo. Then they don't always have the same flexibility in terms of their schedule. They're not flying every day, 5 times a day between cities. But if you have any flexibility on your schedule, the savings are substantial. So check that out. Okay, moving right along, I have to talk about one other thing. This sort of got slipped out right before Thanksgiving, but it's a pretty big issue, and we need to talk about it. There's a piece of legislation before Congress right now. It's part of the FAA reauthorization bill, and in it is language that asks the agency, meaning the FAA, to consider the idea of going back to a single pilot crew, a one-man or one-woman pilot in the cockpit of commercial passenger jets. Now, they are also very specific, saying they want to start this idea on cargo jets. And the presumption is that if it works and there are no incidents, they can drop down to one pilot. Now, I go back to the days where you had 3, right? The pilot, the co-pilot, and the flight engineer. Technology allowed for a safe transition to a 2-person crew where the flight engineer wasn't needed because all the equipment could be monitored and operated by either of the pilots without compromising safety. And that seems to have worked. But going down to one pilot, you have a problem with that? I do. At the end of the day, the accountants running the airlines want to save on money. And the 2 things airlines can't control are labor and fuel. Well, this is a labor one. And as you can imagine, the pilots' unions are not happy about it. And they're also calling into question the fact that, the good news truly is that we've celebrated 25 years of the safest period in commercial aviation since there's been aviation. And part of that, arguably, has been advancements in cockpit management and pilot behavior and procedures in the cockpit that allow for a safety or a safer environment. Taking one of those elements out, meaning the second pilot, certainly, at least on paper, seems to indicate an assault on that system. So we're going to see what happens. But you'll be hearing more about that in the days and weeks to come. I'd love to know what you think about it. And as you know, you can always send in your comments to me, peter@petergreenberg.com, or right here on the right side of the page that I'm going to be looking at in just a few minutes. The other thing I want to share with you, I talked about this last week, but I didn't have the photographic evidence to share. Now I do. And it's the story that, every year I do a story with the TSA because it comes under the categories you can't make this stuff up of all the items that the TSA has seized at security checkpoints that people have actually tried to bring on planes. Chainsaws, right? Um, humongous chopping knives. I'm still hung up on chainsaws. Big jugs of gasoline. Uh, I mean, generators. We can go down the whole list. We're not talking about somebody trying to get a small bottle of water in. No, we're talking about chainsaw, right? Well, this one is pretty funny in retrospect. Probably wasn't funny at the time. A woman checked in this in her luggage. You see it? You see it now. A cat. There it is. The cat was not happy to be there. The TSA was certainly surprised to find it and to take it out. So, okay, let's, all pun intended, the cat is now out of the bag. But I had to show you the photo. I mean, what was she thinking, right? And in real terms, if that bag had been put in the cargo hold on a number of planes where the cargo hold is not pressurized, cat would have died. So let's hear it for the TSA that seized the cat. All right, had to show you that one. Now I'm going to show you something before we get to all of your comments and questions that's not pretty at all. And I'm going to back up and tell you a little history here before I show you the picture. As long as I can remember, when airplanes were manufactured by Boeing and Douglas, later McDonnell Douglas, or Lockheed, or Convair, right? Or, even overseas by British Aerospace or Aerospatiale, there was a procedure to determine the airworthiness of that particular airplane model. And the way they did it was they took a prototype, they put it on a test bed, and then they took every single component part to failure. That's how they wrote the manuals. That's, how they were able to certify the plane was airworthy, what you could do, what you couldn't do, what the plane could do, what it couldn't do. And that's how we manufactured planes and got them certified as airworthy. Well, when Boeing was creating the 787, the first plane to be made almost entirely of composite materials, they went to the FAA and convinced them to let them certify the plane on computer. What were they thinking? Or perhaps, what were they drinking? Metal bends, composite materials snap. Hold that thought. Because the next plane made up of mostly composite materials was done by Airbus, the A350. And they followed Boeing's lead and got the regulators in Europe to allow them to certify the plane on computer. Well, a funny thing, or I should say a not so funny thing, has been happening lately. I was on the runway in Doha with the chairman of Qatar Airways who wanted to show me something. And what he wanted to show me, this is about a year ago, was a row of 23 A350s that had been grounded by their regulator. Turned out to be 29, as we ended up adding to that number. Why were those planes grounded? Because the composite materials were delaminating. They were coming apart in critical places on the wings. They were essentially decomposing in key structural areas that obviously created and presented a severe safety risk. Now, in the case of Qatar and Airbus started to behave like Boeing did on the 737 MAX and said, there's nothing to see here, there's no problem, and we're not fixing it. Well, Qatar sued Airbus, and that case is still in court. Those planes, by the way, are still grounded. Cut to the Boeing 787. made up of composite materials. Well, guess what's decomposing now? Guess what's delaminating now? Key structural parts of the wings. I'm going to show you a photo that I took last week on a flight I took from Santiago back to Houston. No, I take that back. On a flight from Punta Arenas to Santiago. And it was on a Boeing 787 operated by LATAM. Show the picture. You see the wing? You see what's on the wing? Boeing's solution to their delamination problem, I'm not making this up, is duct tape. Now, the photo that I'm showing you is the one that I took. I've seen other photos recently of other 787 wings in which at least half the wing surface is covered by duct tape. Does anybody have a problem with this other than me? What's the FAA doing about it? Right now, I mean, I've tried to find out, and the answer is nothing. For the moment, it's an FAA approved fix. Can somebody please explain this to me? We're not just talking about what it looks like aesthetically, but hey, look, I like to travel with duct tape. I really do, because it does tend to fix everything temporarily. But if I have a crack on a piece of plastic and I want to fix with duct tape, I'm not taking that plastic into the air at 500 miles an hour, right? Well, the bottom line is this is a story I'm going to continue to follow, but you need to know that the picture that I'm showing you right now is not an isolated picture. There are lots of 787s running around with duct tape on the wings. Just thought I'd let you know about a continuing story. Now, let's start scrolling and talking to everybody. I'm going to start doing it now. Let me scroll back up. Okay. Michael Uden, my buddy. Thank you, sir. And we owe each other a dinner very soon in New York. Okay, Jew is saying hi from Japan. Sue is saying hi from Bellingham, Washington. And Patty's saying award ticket rules have changed dramatically. Hey, don't I know it? I've been sounding that alarm for a long time, Patty. And if you've got a lot of miles sitting around, I mean, listen, they do not accrue interest. Your frequent flyer program is not a bank, so keeping them in there is not really helping anybody, okay? Other than giving the airlines essentially an interest-free loan, but that's another story. Remember the story I shared with you a couple of weeks ago that a first-class award ticket on Delta from the United States down to South America, how many miles do you think they were requiring? Are you ready? It used to be about 120,000. Then it went to 160,000. The one I showed you, we had a picture of it, 745,000 miles for a ticket. Now I'm going to do the math for you. 54% of all airline mileage is earned on the ground with your affinity credit card, right? American Express, Visa, MasterCard, tied into a particular airline program or programs. That means if you get a 25,000 mile award ticket, it's not exactly free, right? Because it means you've already spent $14,000 to get there, not to mention the additional money you spent for the airfare for the mileage you actually earned in the air. So if you take that 54% figure and apply it to Delta asking for 749,000 miles for one round trip ticket, that's about $410,000 that you spent for that airline ticket. You could charter the entire plane for that and charge all your friends money and actually make money. It makes no sense. And I totally agree with you, Patty. Those rules are not beneficial to us. Okay, Paul Koza wants to know, greetings from Ashland, Virginia. How do you keep your physiology and biorhythms in sync with your extensive travel schedule? Any tips for us casual travelers? Well, with the notable exception of my voice today, I'm feeling great. I travel about 440,000 miles a year. I'm only 19. End of story. No, I'm kidding. Here's what I do. A couple of things. It's hydration. It's all of this. You got to keep doing it on the ground and in the air, number one. Number two, most people don't eat airline food because they're hungry. They eat it because they're bored. And ever served them, they say, well, I might as well finish all of it because I got nothing else to do. Airline food is in most respects an oxymoron. I know it, you know it. So what do I eat on the plane? If they have any kind of fruit, I'll have that. I'll cheat with seltzer and ice. That's it. Now, on some transcon flights, I will cheat. If I'm up in business class and they have an ice cream sundae, I'll do it. But that's it. If I feel like sleeping on the plane, I sleep on the plane. If I feel like working on the plane or watching a movie, I do that. The key for me is really what I do when I land. And I can't say it's going to work for you, but I will tell you it does work for me. And here's the deal. No matter where I'm going, no matter what time I land, I will stay up until midnight local time before I go to bed. And now I only average about 4 hours of sleep a night anyway, but I'll cycle then and I'll go to bed like midnight, 1 o'clock, wake up at 5, do the whole thing over again. But if you get to your destination and you have a heavy lunch or an afternoon snack, or even worse, an afternoon nap, no one will see you for 3 days, including you. So anyway, that's how I do it. And when I come back, I repeat the same process. Do it actually in reverse. All right. Bill's greetings from Route 76 Voyager off the coast of Angola and route to Namibia. How cool is that? If you're off the coast of Angola en route to Namibia, unless I'm not looking at my map, are you going around the Cape? Tell me more. All right. Good morning from Denver, Evelyn. Good morning right back. Okay, Jeanette says, what are my thoughts on booking through Hopper? The same as my thoughts on booking through Expedia, Travelocity, or Orbitz. Always compare by having a conversation with the airline. How many times have you gone online to see in that little upper right-hand corner on the fare that you wanted only 2 seats left, and you get nervous and you hit the keystroke and buy it? What that really means is there are only 2 seats left in the allotment of tickets given to that particular online travel agency. It doesn't mean necessarily there are only 2 seats left on the plane. Have a conversation. And if you can't get through on the phone, then call at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. You'll get somebody. But you owe it to yourself to be a good comparison shopper and talk to somebody on the phone. Could be a travel agent, could be the airline directly. Because remember, what they're seeing on their computer screen in terms of inventory is clearly not what you're seeing on your screen. And I hope you understand that. You also asked, Jeanette, I heard you may need a visa next year to travel to the EU countries. This is true. They are rattling the cage at the European Union and claiming we might need one. I don't know if it'll hold up. My guess is by February, they're going to change their mind again. So stay tuned. Ciao from Tampa, says Barbara. All right. And Camilla says, cheers from Tucson. Joy Daniel says, will there be any more cruise deals like Cyber Monday and Travel Tuesday? Of course there will. And this is why. There are 75 new cruise ships coming online in the next 7 months. That's a lot of cabins to fill. And while the high-end cruises, I'm talking about the world cruises, the 180-day cruises, are selling out like you can't believe at the highest ticket prices ever imaginable, the other cruises are not necessarily selling out. And so you're going to see these real fast pop-up sales to fill incremental revenue on a limited number of cabins or inventory. Right now, for example, I saw a 4-night cruise from Miami to Nassau in the Bahamas for $240. That's on Norwegian. $240, that's $60 a day. You can't afford to wake up in Phoenix for $40 or $60 a day. And that includes your meals. Now, what it doesn't include, of course, is alcohol and shore excursions and all the other ancillary charges you're going to spend should you want to do so. But in many cases, a lot of these cruise lines are offering onboard credits or free shore excursions. So check it out. You will see those deals popping up through the end of February. Marley says, is Iceland a good idea in February? Iceland offering a winter package to Reykjavik. Well, listen, you're never going to Iceland to get a suntan, even in June. Why are you going to Iceland? Because you want to experience the elements there. You know, this volcanic island is so amazing. The geothermal aspects alone are just mind blowing. So, if you want to do it, my advice is, and this goes back to my days in college when we flew Iceland Air, we didn't fly Iceland Air to go to Iceland. We flew Iceland Air to go through Iceland into Europe because it was cheap. Guess what? It's still cheap. Check out Iceland Air's deal that allows you to go to any one of about 15 cities in Europe with a free stopover in Reykjavik, and now you solve both problems. Okay. All right. I'm getting back some of your feedback on the one pilot idea. Most of you don't like it. I get it. Okay. Richard said, I missed signing up for the Frontier Airlines flight promotion for a year. Was it a good deal? I'll give you a qualified yes. It was called a Go Wild deal. It was $599. And it gave you for 300 calendar days a year the opportunity to fly, right? Now, there were a couple of catches. Number one, you could only make a reservation 24 hours before your flight. And that, of course, presumes they were available. You still had to pay taxes and fees. If you wanted a better seat, you still had to pay that upgrade thing. But if you do the math and you had any flexibility in your schedule, it was a good deal. They even came out with a program for kids. Again, but you got to be flexible. And the other little catch is, if you liked it, it renews automatically the next year at about $1,500. Still a good deal if you're going to fly a lot. But remember, you're not going to be flying before Thanksgiving or before July 4th or before Memorial Day or before Easter. There were blackout dates. But for the other 300 days of the year, if they had a seat on the plane and you wanted to reserve a day in advance, you got it. You may remember, by the way, Southwest Airlines came out, excuse me, not Southwest, JetBlue came out with a deal about 2 years ago, actually about 3 years ago, the all-you-can-fly deal. So popular, the airline had to withdraw the offer. Alaska Airlines has a flight pass right now out for anybody flying in the Northwest and the Southwest. You should check out. Mike says, how do you know she packed the cat on purpose? Mike, always asking the really tough questions. Listen, I'm sure you could argue that she wasn't paying attention and the cat really wanted to go to wherever the flight was going and jumped in the bag and hid out. Okay, it's possible, but I think it was the other way around. Remember, they charge you now to fly with a pet on board, right? Okay, let's keep going here. Hold on. I'm trying to scroll down. It's not scrolling down. Hold on. Here we go. Sorry about that. Lois says global entry can be used at a few international airports like Dubai. Do you think it will expand to other airports? Well, it can't be used at Dubai. It can be used in Abu Dhabi because that's where they have something called pre-clearance. Now, pre-clearance has been around since 1952. It was started in Canada, and you can get it at airports like the Bahamas, Bermuda, Ireland, Canada. I mentioned many airports in Canada, and even Abu Dhabi, not Dubai. And that's where you clear U.S. Customs and Immigration in those countries for your return flight home, so that when your plane lands in the U.S., you're already home, get your bags and go, or your bags connect, and you go on to your onward destination. So we hope it will expand to other airports. I'm waiting for it to get to Heathrow or Charles de Gaulle or Frankfurt, where it's really needed because of just the numbers involved. Okay. Harriet and Jim Sarah in Austin, Texas. Yes, I'm okay. Just a little hoarse today. It happens. Patty Ford says, planes do not crash like they once did. Patty, let's talk about this. With the exception of an American Airlines flight in November of 2001 in Rockaway, it was going to the Dominican Republic, or Colgan Air in February of 2009. We have been, if I had some wood, I'll knock on it right now. We have been amazingly lucky. We have not had a major plane fatality in the US, with those two exceptions, in 25 years. That is a remarkable safety record. It needs to be applauded. It needs to be acknowledged. I just did. My problem is, how do you maintain it? And you don't maintain it with duct tape. I rest my case, Your Honor. Okay. Linda says, will car rental rates come down in June 2023? Well, where are you asking about? I can't answer that question generally. Give me a destination, we can talk about it. Excuse me. All right, let's keep going. Hello from Rwanda. All right. Hello from Tanzania. All right. Greetings from Carroll, Iowa. Okay. Patty says 6 a.m. is a good time to call too. What time zone, Patty? Priya's watching in Irvine. Here's a nice general question from Cherie, who says, how do I feel about travel insurance? Well, I can't give you a singular answer to that because there's so many different kinds of travel insurance. There's basic trip insurance, there's trip cancellation and interruption insurance, and then there's medical evacuation and repatriation coverage. And we've covered that so much on the show. Let me get into it again next week because I can really write down for you what you need to know you should never do, and then how you go about getting to a mutually agreeable definition of terms before you ever buy any travel insurance policy. All right. Iris says hi from Antigua on vacation. Hope you're having a great time. Okay. Harvey says, I read that the paint peeling off the composite surfaces is just that, not a deterioration of the composite airframe, a cosmetic issue that has no effect on airworthiness. Harvey, we've already determined that it is decomposing, and it's not just peeling off, it's really peeling off, and in some cases can cause an electrical issue on the wings, which you don't want that to happen for another reason. Where do you think the fuel is? So I'm going to say, for the sake of our discussion here, that until they can convince me that duct tape truly fixes everything on a plane, I'm going to continue to ask those questions. And I think you should too. All right. Here we go. Any movement in Congress about seat requirement on the airlines? That's from Harriet and Jim. Here's the deal. It's not up to Congress yet. It's an FAA issue. Congress ordered the FAA back in 2018 to come up with a standard regulation and measurement for what's considered a safe and reliable and meaningful airline seat, especially in terms of an evacuation. The FAA essentially ignored them for 4 years and now is just getting into it. So until the FAA comes up with that, Congress can't do anything. Let's see what happens. Julie's saying, thinking of doing a volunteer vacation in Tanzania in March or April, wondering what it's like there in terms of weather and possible safari after a week of volunteering. Would start from Arusha. Okay. The answer is do it. You're going to be fine. Look, it's a little bit rainy, but it doesn't rain every day, and you're going to be fine, especially at higher elevations, which is where you're starting. So my suggestion is go for it. All right. A lot of folks coming in now saying hi from Tanzania. Colleen wants to know, did I do the polar plunge in Antarctica? Well, let me tell you a story. We were set to do the polar plunge, but the weather changed so rapidly that we had to actually end the trip a day early because it was going to come in and sock in King George Island, where there's a Chilean Air Force base, an ice and gravel runway, if you will, and we wouldn't have been able to get out for 3 years. So we got in early, took the Zodiacs in, and it was a good thing that we did get out then because it was socked in for 3 days. So the answer to your question is, I didn't do it. I wanted to do it. I was set to do it, but we had to end the trip a day early. Ivan says, if my passport expired this year and I do not have any international travel planned, would you say to renew it on your own or go through a passport expediter like It's Easy and pay their appropriate fee on top of the passport renewal fee? Well, you've just asked a rhetorical question. If you have no international travel planned for this year, then do it the normal way because you're not in a rush. However, every time my friends have done that, all of a sudden a friend calls them a week later and says, hey, let's Rio, let's go to London. And they couldn't do it because they didn't have the passport. So if it's not a question of what it costs, if it's a question of what it's worth, I go through an expediter anyway because the wait times are still not acceptable on the normal way for the passport agencies. So that's my advice. But if you could honestly tell me you have no international travel plan for the next year, then you know what? Do it the normal way. But then don't come crying to me when you want to go somewhere in the spur of the moment and your passport hasn't come back yet. Okay. Boston Bob says, now Delta increases fees for the Sky Club access. Yes, they did, and makes it unavailable for their elite frequent flyer members. That's exactly what we were just talking about. They sent a letter to their elite frequent flyer members saying, we love you, but you can't use the club. Or you can only use the club if it's a Wednesday, your middle name is Murray, and we're looking the other way. I'm kidding, but not by much. Delta has a real problem on their hands because they gave away too many memberships in conjunction with credit card promotions, and now they literally cannot handle the situation. And if you're wondering which credit card it was American Express. Evelyn says the AirPass was going bye-bye. I'm going to take a sip of water and tell you what I mean by that. Back in 1981, an American Airlines employee named Carter Bibby, I know this story well, came up with a brilliant idea. And here's the idea. If you wrote American Airlines a check for $250,000, they gave you an AirPass card. And what was that card? Unlimited. Did you hear me? Unlimited first-class travel for life. That's right. And because you had paid for the pass, it qualified as a paid ticket. You even earned mileage. It was like nuclear fusion. Well, the people who had that kind of money didn't run. They rocketed to send them the check. In fact, the number of LA Lakers, Magic Johnson, Kareem, James Worthy guys, went to the owner of the Lakers, Jerry Buss, and made it part of their contract negotiation to give them the pass, which they're still using today. If I had that money back then and had written that check, I probably would have single-handedly ended the program. But I mean, people were flying to Tokyo for lunch. I mean, seriously. Now they got rid of the lifetime passes many years ago. They then did it on a fee basis based on the number of miles you were flying. You could buy it sort of like a subscription pass. Well, that ended yesterday. American Airlines said, no more. We're not selling them anymore. If you still have the subscription-based model, you can, play out your miles, and then when it's over, it's over. But those guys and women who bought the unlimited lifetime for $250,000, well, lifetime is lifetime. They can still use them. How do you like that? I wish I would have had the money back then, trust me. Patty's saying hi from Kentucky. And go back up here for a second before we run out of time. Okay, let's do the photo of the week. We actually have two. Let me, I can't see it on my screen, but that's okay. I'm gonna tell you which one it is. We have two winners because we had one last week, which we couldn't get to. So this week's winner goes to Colleen Casey, who writes, a few weeks ago, we were peacefully enjoying a glass of wine on the deck when a new friend dropped in, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, for those people who remember that book. He wasn't pleased when we refused to share our Brittany oysters with him, blah, 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 blah. But cool thing about this photo is where it was taken. It was taken at the Tia Leania Hotel in Treburden. You know where that is, everybody? It's in northwestern France. It's in Brittany, where they not only have the best oysters in the world, they also have the best butter. So this seagull is flying around the right location if he likes oysters and butter. In any case, thank you, Colleen, for that. And the winner, the second winner, is from who sent this photo in? I'm going to tell you right now. Holly Hendrickson. It was early in the morning, 5:30 a.m., when I looked out my window and saw this beautiful view of the iconic Sydney Opera House from my cruise ship balcony. And, early morning light, there's a lot to be said for it. It's magic hour. And I'm dating myself because I first went to the Sydney Opera House back in 1974. And it's been around almost 50 years. Amazing. So thank you both for sending in those photos. And if you think you have a photo that qualifies as the photo of the week, you know what to do. Just send it to me, peter@petergreenberg.com. And if we agree with you, we're going to post it just like we did just now. Let me go right now to the some other questions you guys sent in during the week. Okay. Please update me on when to buy airfare. I'm flying Tampa to Dublin in mid-April, returning early May, and the fares keep going up. Okay. You're buying it way too early now. We're just in December. Wait until maybe the end of January. And now, if you're going in mid-April, does that qualify? Does that coincide with Easter? That may be a problem. Or a big spring break thing. I don't know. Or a big event in Ireland. But as a general rule, buying it now is way too early. But look, you have an opportunity to go online to research, right? And then pick up the phone, call a travel agent or the airline that you want to fly on. Could be United, could be Aer Lingus, could be a number of them, and quote from them as well. You might be pleasantly surprised. It's very fluid, especially in Europe. You heard what I said about just the flights to Paris. Okay. Pam says, do I think joining Clear is a good idea? Is it different than TSA check-in? You're actually asking if it's different than TSA pre-check. Well, actually, it parallels pre-check. I'm a member of Clear. I love it because some of the pre-check lines are too long. And what Clear lets you do, by the way, you never have to even show a boarding pass because it biometrically reads your eyes, confirms the flight that you're on, and you can show the boarding pass. They stamp it, and then they take you to the front of the TSA pre-check line. In many airports, that's worth everything. Okay. What do I think from Ann? What do I think will happen with travel and the global recession? Well, first of all, I haven't seen the recession yet, but I will tell you that Americans have been traveling with abandon. They're not price sensitive. They're paying these fares. I thought the demand would drop off after Labor Day. I was wrong. It's still going. And you're seeing airfares between 23 and 30% above what they were in 2019. You already heard me talk about hotel rates, in some cases up 40% over 2019. And people are still paying. Well, at a certain point, the bill comes. And it happens to coincide with what? The holidays. So people have already paid their airfares. Now they have a choice to make about Christmas shopping. Not only what they're going to buy, but what they're going to spend and who they're going to spend it on. And my guess is, other than what just happened on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, you're going to see a drop off in retail. And it may not be a very healthy season. Already, FedEx has announced they are closing 90 offices and parking a number of their airplanes. Here's the rhetorical question. When was the last time you saw FedEx park airplanes in November and December? How about never? So that's one indication. May not be the only indication, but that's one indication about something that retailers should be worried about. And of course, those bills are coming in as well. Okay. I'm looking here. Okay. Jill says, have I ever been on one of Disney's cruises? I'm wondering if it's worth the price. Well, I have to tell you, I was somewhat cynical before I went on a Disney cruise. So the answer to your question is yes, I've been on more than one. And I was convinced that I was going to be a prisoner of singing It's a Small World After All for 7 days at sea. I can tell you happily that was not the case. Disney has come a long way. They understand what kids want. They understand what parents want for their kids. They also have really good dining outlets now on the ships that are not, theme park food. The only problem I have with some of the ships, this usually happens in the harbor, is that some captains allow the kids up on the bridge to ring the bell, meaning the horn. And do you know what the horn sounds like? Na, 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 na. How many times can you hear that? But other than that, I have to tell you, I was converted, and I wasn't going on with any kids. I was going on by myself just to check it out. I had a very good time. Speaking of having a very good time, our wake up tomorrow is at 5:45 here in the desert. That's wheels up time to get out to a place called Elephant Rock, and you should check it out. There are pictures you can see online. It's worth seeing out in the middle of the desert, which truly is the Saudi version of Petra. The Nabateans were here as well. We'll be shooting out there tomorrow. And then next week, our global travel update will not be coming from the US, but from another surprise location that most of you will never guess. So I'm not even going to give you a hint. I'll just say, you know where to reach me in the meantime, peter@petergreenberg.com. Our radio show coming from Saudi Arabia day after tomorrow, so listen in. And of course, Hidden Canary Islands, you can watch it on PBS, Amazon Prime, and Apple TV Plus, and some other shows about to happen, which we'll let you know about, of course, next week and in the following week. So thanks to Anthony for working on this today, for traveling with us. Thanks to you for watching. My voice will be back next week. And have a great weekend, everybody. Travel safe and travel smart.